The Winston Hill courtroom smelled of old varnish and stale coffee, its air thick with the weight of justice too often delayed. The ceiling fan groaned overhead, a mechanical pulse that marked time more than it cooled the room. At the center of this stifling space stood James Carter, 69. His dark skin etched with lines carved by decades of labor under Georgia's unforgiving sun, and a system that had tried to grind him down since birth. His silver-framed glasses sat slightly askew. His suit pressed but worn clung to his frame with a quiet dignity. When he rose from his seat, adjusting his posture to stand straighter before the bench, it wasn't defiance. It was survival, a lesson learned in the Jim Crow South, where a man's spine was his only shield. The shift in his posture caught the eye of Travis Holden, a 48-year-old police lieutenant whose blonde buzzcut and polished badge screamed authority. His uniform was starched to perfection, his boots polished to a mirror shine, but it was his eye cold, blue, and narrow that carried the real weight of his power. Travis didn't just wear his badge, he wielded it like a club, and James Carter, in his mind, was a trespasser in a space reserved for order. His order. The room felt smaller as Travis stepped forward, his boots clicking on the hardwood floor, each step a deliberate challenge. "Who the hell do you think you are, old man?" he barked, his voice slicing through the murmurs of the courtroom. "You don't belong here. Go back to your damn corner, boy." The word boy landed like a lash, deliberate and cruel, a slur wrapped in a sneer. The courtroom held its breath. A woman in the third row clutched her purse, her knuckles whitening. A clerk's pen froze mid-sentence. The judge, perched behind the bench, glanced up but said nothing, his silence a permission slip for what came next. James didn't respond. His eyes, steady behind blood-flecked glasses, met Travis's with a calm that felt like a rebuke. That look unbroken, unflinching lit a fuse in Travis. "You think you're somebody?" he hissed, stepping closer, his breath hot with contempt. "You're nothing here." Before anyone could react, Travis's hand shot out, a practice motion that cracked across James's face with a sound like a whip snapping. Blood sprayed, a crimson arc splattering across James's glasses, one drop pulling like a bullseye on the lens. The courtroom froze. A woman gasped, her phone trembling as she recorded, the lens catching the glint of blood in the fluorescent light. A man in a cheap suit flinched, turning away as if the act could be unseen. The judge's gavel hung in the air, unstruck, as if the system itself was too stunned to respond. Travis didn't flinch. He wiped his hand on his pants, the gesture casual, almost bored, as if James's blood was a stain he could erase. "Should have stayed down," he muttered, loud enough for the front row to hear, his lips curling into a smirk that carried no remorse, only triumph. He turned away, his boots clicking again, confident the world would bend to his will as it always had. James didn't stumble. He didn't cry out. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, white, worn, folded with the care of a man who'd learned to carry his dignity like a weapon. He dabbed at his lip, the blood staining the cloth red, his movements precise, almost ceremonial. His glasses, now streaked with crimson, remained askew, but he adjusted them with two steady fingers, leaving the blood drop untouched, a silent testament to the violence. The room watched, but no one spoke. The silence wasn't just cowardice, it was complicity. A collective agreement to look away, to let men like Travis rewrite justice with their fists. But in the back row, one man didn't look away. Daniel Carter, 37, FBI agent, stood silently, his dark suit blending into the shadows of the last pew. His face was stone, but his eyes burned with a fire that didn't need words to speak. He didn't storm forward, didn't shout, didn't demand justice in a room that had already failed to deliver it. Instead, he turned and walked out, his steps measured, his jaw tight. The door didn't slam, it clicked shut, a sound sharper than any outburst, carrying the weight of a promise unspoken. Outside, the Georgia sun beat down on the courthouse steps, indifferent to the violence within. Daniel slid into his black sedan, parked 3 blocks away in an alley where no one would notice. He tapped the dashboard, and a secure FBI channel flickered to life, the screen glowing with cold precision. He entered his credentials without looking, his fingers moving with the muscle memory of a man who lived for moments like this, not for revenge, but for clarity. "Activate subject. Travis Holden," he said, his voice low, steady, unyielding. "Full surveillance, retroactive file integration. Priority A3. The response was immediate, a robotic voice cutting through the static, confirmed. "Authority, Agent Daniel Carter, Level 6. Proceeding?" Daniel leaned back, his hand steady on the wheel, his mind already mapping the battlefield. Travis Holden had just made a mistake, one that would echo far beyond the courtroom. He hadn't just slept, an old man had slapped Daniel Carter's father. And Daniel wasn't a man who shouted. He was a man who acted, a blade sharpened by years of silence and resolve. Inside, Travis cracked his knuckles, his smirk widening as he leaned toward a deputy, his voice dripping with confidence. That old man's got nothing. No one's coming for me. He laughed, a short barking sound that echoed off the wood-paneled walls. The deputy nodded, uneasy, but didn't contradict him. The courtroom resumed its rhythm, papers shuffled. The judge called the next case, as if blood on a pair of glasses was just another Tuesday. But Travis was wrong. He'd slapped the wrong man, and the consequences were already in motion, gathering speed like a storm no one could outrun. The sun had barely set over Winston Hill, its last rays painting the sky in streaks of orange and ash, when Daniel Carter pulled his sedan into a deserted lot behind a shuttered textile mill. The air smelled of rust and neglect, the kind of place where secrets were buried, not born. He killed the engine, letting the silence settle, and opened his laptop, its blue glow the only light in the car. The courtroom video was already cued, paused on the moment Travis Holden's hand met his father's face. Daniel didn't flinch at the image, James Carter's head snapping back, blood arcing through the air, but his fingers tightened on the edge of the laptop, the plastic creaking under his grip. He wasn't here to feel. He was here to act. He zoomed in frame by frame, until Travis's face filled the screen. The lieutenant's eyes gleamed with something beyond anger, satisfaction. Maybe, or the thrill of power unchecked. Daniel had seen that look before, not just in men like Travis but in case files, in grainy bodycam footage, in the faces of those who thought they could bend the world to their will. He tapped his earpiece, his voice low but steady. Initiate behavioral tracking, Travis Holden. Protocol A3. Cross-reference all complaints, sealed or active, last 10 years. The system hummed, a faint vibration against his ear. Subject flagged. Surveillance active. Data pull initiated. Daniel leaned back, his eyes never leaving the screen. This wasn't revenge, it was excavation. A peeling back of layers to expose the rot beneath. The first file pinged onto his screen within minutes. A digital ghost from a case marked closed. A construction worker, Jamal Harris, 34, paralyzed after a traffic stop gone wrong. The report was sterile. Subject resisted. Force deemed necessary. But a handwritten note, buried in an appendix, told a different story. Holden laughed when Harris begged for an ambulance. Daniel's jaw tightened. He opened another file, Letitia Monroe, a nurse, harassed after reporting a theft at her clinic. Her complaint vanished, marked unsubstantiated. Then another. A teenager, dead by suicide after an unrecorded interrogation. Each file ended the same. Witness retracted. Evidence inconclusive. Travis wasn't just a bad cop, he was a symptom. A man shielded by a system that valued loyalty over truth. Daniel's phone buzzed, a secure message from an old contact, Marla Evans, a former internal affairs officer who'd left the force under pressure. Meet me. Old gas station, Route 17. Midnight. Bring nothing but trust. He didn't hesitate. He drove, the sedan cutting through Winston Hill's quiet streets, past neon-lit diners and churches with faded signs promising salvation. The gas station was a skeleton of its former self, its pumps rusted, its windows boarded. Marla waited in the shadows, her hoodie pulled tight against the late summer chill. She was older than Daniel remembered, her eyes sharp but tired, lines carved by years of fighting battles no one wanted to win. "You're playing with fire, Carter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she handed him a scratched USB drive. "This is the only copy." Holden bragged about its aid. He folded a weak one like it was a game. "Smashed my laptop after I copied it. If they traced this, I was never here." Daniel took the drive, his fingers brushing hers, and nodded. He didn't ask questions. Marla's presence was answer enough. Back in the car, he plugged the drive into his laptop, and Travis's voice filled the air, smug and unfiltered. "I just gave him a nudge, one kick, and he crumpled. If he couldn't take it, that's on him. I don't kill people, I teach him their place." The audio cut off, replaced by static, but the words lingered, each one a nail in a coffin Daniel was building with care. He uploaded the audio to the FBI's Behavioral Ethics Board, flagging it for social dehumanization. The system pinged back, level orange. One step from red, one step from federal action. But Daniel knew Travis wasn't working alone. The files, the vanished complaints, the sealed cases, they pointed to someone higher, someone with the power to make evidence disappear. His eyes drifted to a name in the metadata, Judge Warren Holt. The same judge who'd sat silent as Travis slapped James Carter, his gavel still, his face unreadable. Daniel typed a new command, cross-reference Holt, Warren. Call logs, financials, communications with Holden, Travis. The system hummed again, and Daniel felt the weight of the truth settling in. This wasn't just about a slop, it was about a system that let men like Travis thrive. Meanwhile, across town, the courtroom video was spreading like wildfire. The woman in the third row, a paralegal named Keisha Wells, had uploaded it to Twitter with a trembling caption, "This is Winston Hill. This is what they do to us." By midnight, the video had 10,000 retweets, the hashtag WrongManSlap trending locally. By 2 a.m., it was national, with TikTok edits looping Travis's smirk over protest anthems and Reddit threads dissecting every frame. A second video surfaced, grainier, from a bystander's phone, catching Travis laughing as James dabbed blood from his lip. The internet didn't just react, it roared. Travis' laughs at pain became a rallying cry, with memes flooding X. One showed Travis's face with "unlawful but confident" scrawled across it, another James's steady gaze captioned, "He didn't flinch, but you should've." CNN picked it up by morning, a split screen of James's bloodied glasses next to Travis's award ceremony grin, the anchor's voice grim, "A community demands answers." Daniel didn't watch the news. He was in a safe house, a nondescript apartment on the edge of Winston Hill, its walls bare except for a single map pinned with red dots marking Travis's known haunts. He opened a secure tablet and pulled up the courtroom footage again, this time from a third Angela security camera above the judge's bench. It showed something the public hadn't seen. Travis glancing at Holt before the slap, a subtle nod, a signal. Daniel froze the frame, his pulse quickening. He cross-referenced Holt's call logs, and there it was. A 90-second call to Travis 2 nights before, encrypted, untraceable without FBI clearance. Daniel had that clearance. He sent the request, and within hours a partial transcript landed in his inbox. "Keep it clean. No messes." The voice was Holt's, unmistakable from years of courtroom recordings. He needed more. Daniel drove to a diner on the outskirts of town, a place where cops and clerks mingled over greasy eggs and weak coffee. He wore a plain jacket, no badge, no gun, blending into the cracked vinyl booths. He planted a listening device the week before, a tiny black dot under a table where Travis liked to sit. The audio feed crackled to life in his earpiece as Travis and Holt met, their voices low but clear. "You need to bury this," Travis hissed, his tone sharp with panic. "That old man's kid is sniffing around. FBI, they say." Holt's voice was smooth, practiced, like a man who'd cleaned up messes before. "I've got it handled. Files vanish. Witnesses forget. You keep your mouth shut." Daniel recorded every word, every pause, every clink of coffee cups. The evidence was mounting, a tower of truth no one could topple. But Travis wasn't done. Late that night, Daniel's phone buzzed with a blocked number. He answered, his voice flat. "Carter." A laugh came through, low and mocking. "You think you're slick, huh? Digging into me? Your old man got what he deserved, and you'll get yours if you don't back off." It was Travis, his bravado fraying at the edges. Daniel didn't respond. He traced the call, pinpointing it to a burner phone in a precinct parking lot. He saved the audio, tagged it, and added it to the file. Travis was slipping, his confidence cracking under the weight of his own arrogance. The next morning, Daniel met with a tech analyst, a young agent named Priya Sharma, who'd cracked open sealed cases before. She handed him a folder, her hand steady but her eyes wary. "You're not gonna like this," she said. "Holden's got a juvenile case sealed tight. 2008. A kid named Elijah Carter, beaten at a protest, neck broken, ruled an accident. Guess who was lead officer?" Daniel's breath caught, the name hitting like a punch. Elijah, his younger brother, gone at 15, the case buried before Daniel could even grieve. He opened the folder, his hand steady despite the storm inside. A single photo stared back. Elijah bloodied, his eyes wide with fear, Travis's shadow looming in the frame. "They said it was a crowd surge," Priya added. "But the body cam was lost. I found a backup." "It's bad, Daniel." He didn't look at her. He couldn't. He played the backup footage, the screen flickering with static. Travis's voice, younger but unmistakable, laughed as Elijah begged for his mother. "Stay down, kid," he'd said, his boot pressing into Elijah's back. The footage cut off, but the sound lingered, a ghost that had haunted Daniel for years. He closed the laptop, his face unreadable, and handed Priya a drive. "Clone it. Secure it. No leaks." She nodded, her jaw tight. "You're going after him, aren't you?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. By noon, the public outcry was deafening. A local activist group, Justice Now, organized a rally outside the courthouse, their signs reading, "No more blood on badges." A teenager, no older than Elijah had been, held a poster of James's bloodied glasses, her eyes wet but fierce. The video had reached millions, with influencers and pastors alike calling for Travis's badge. A cable news pundit, sweating under studio lights, tried to defend him. Maybe the old man provoked him. The backlash was swift. X erupted with thousands of replies, drowning the pundit in a sea of screenshots and clips. A viral tweet read, "Travis Holden hit a 69-year-old man and laughed. Tell me again who's provoked." Daniel stayed in the shadows, his sedan parked across from the precinct where Travis worked. He watched as officers milled about, their faces tight, their whispers urgent. Travis's name was poison now, his allies dwindling. Daniel's phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "You're not untouchable, Carter. Watch your back." He didn't flinch. He traced it, another burner, this one from a gas station near Holt's office. The net was tightening and Travis was thrashing, but Daniel was patient. He opened his laptop again, pulling up a new file. Holt's financials. A series of payments, small but regular, to a shell company tied to a precinct/fund. The dots were connecting, each one a step closer to the truth. That night, Daniel sat in his apartment, the map on the wall now covered in red and blue pins, red for Travis's crimes, blue for Holt's cover-ups. He poured a coffee, black and bitter, and played the diner audio again, memorizing every word. Travis's voice, smug and careless, echoed, "Holt's got my back. I drop names, he drops hammers." Daniel paused the recording, his eyes narrowing. He typed a final command. Escalate to federal oversight. Priority Holt Warren. Suspected obstruction. The system pinged back. Escalation approved. Oversight board notified. He leaned back, the coffee untouched, his mind racing. The tower of evidence was tall now, unyielding, but it wasn't enough. He needed Holt to break, Travis to fall, and the system to bend. Outside, Winston Hill was waking up. The rally had grown, spilling into the streets, with chants of justice for James, echoing through the night. A local pastor took the megaphone, his voice booming, "We will not be silent. We will not be broken." A news van parked nearby, its camera rolling, capturing the crowd's fury and resolve. Daniel didn't join them. He didn't need to. His fight was quieter, sharper, a blade honed in silence. But as he looked out his window, the city lights blurred by rain, he felt the weight of his father's bloodied glasses, Elijah's broken neck, and every silenced voice that had come before. Travis Holden had slapped the wrong man, and Daniel Carter was going to make sure the world knew it. The Federal Oversight Office in Atlanta was a fortress of glass and steel, its corridors lined with portraits of men who'd shaped the law or broken it. Daniel Carter walked through those halls at 7 a.m., his dark suit crisp, his face unreadable, a sealed file tucked under his arm like a grenade with the pin half-pulled. The air smelled of disinfectant and bureaucracy, a sterile contrast to the storm brewing inside him. He'd spent weeks building this moment, piece-by-piece audio clips, call logs, suppressed complaints, a body cam clip that still haunted his dreams. Today wasn't about justice yet. It was about exposure, about dragging Travis Holden and Judge Warren Holt into the light where their shadows couldn't hide. He entered a conference room, its long table flanked by agents in suits and a single woman in a gray blazer. Thomas leered, Chief Inspector, her eyes sharp as a blade. Daniel didn't sit. He slid the file across the table, its weight thudding against the polished wood. Travis Holden and Warren Holt, he said, his voice low, steady, cutting through the hum of the air conditioning. They're wired together. Call logs, audio, suppressed complaints. It's all here. Lear didn't flinch. She opened the file, her fingers flipping through pages with the precision of a surgeon. Her eyes scanned the first page of metadata linking Holt to a sealed case, and she tapped a button on her phone. Patch Agent Carter to Oversight Channel 1. Now! Within minutes, Daniel was on a secure line with the task force, their voices crackling through his earpiece. Holden's call logs showed 2 encrypted calls to Holt, an analyst reported. One before a misconduct complaint vanished. Another before a juvenile case was sealed in '08. Daniel's jaw tightened at the mention of 2008. Elijah Carter, his brother 15, broken in a protest turned violent, his case buried under lies. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The task force knew his reputation. Agent Carter, the man who didn't miss, didn't blink, didn't break. Leard looked up, her gaze locking onto his. "You're sure about Holt?" she asked. Daniel nodded, sliding a USB drive across. Diner audio. Their own words. The confrontation with Holt came first, scheduled for 9 a.m. in a soundproofed room deep in the oversight wing. Daniel stood by the door, his arms crossed as Judge Warren Holt entered, his tailored suit screaming wealth, his gray eyes cold as slate. Holt's presence filled the room, not with authority but with the arrogance of a man who'd never been questioned. He sat, his hands folded, his lips curled in a faint smile. "Agent Carter, this is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice smooth as polished wood, practiced from years of bending truth from the bench. "You're chasing ghosts." Daniel didn't sit. He slid an audio recorder across the table and pressed play. Travis Holden's voice filled the room, smug and careless. "Holt's got my back. I drop names, he drops hammers." Holt's jaw ticked, his composure fracturing for a split second before he recovered. "That's not evidence," he said, leaning back. "That's a loudmouth exaggerating for clout." Daniel didn't blink. He tapped the recorder again, and Holt's own voice echoed from the diner. "Files vanish. Witnesses forget." The judge's hands froze on his briefcase, his knuckles whitening. "You planted that," he said, his voice rising, a crack in his polished facade. "You're accusing a federal judge without proof." Daniel leaned forward, his voice low-cutting. "You didn't order the slap. You just made sure no one could prove it. You opened the door and Travis walked through it every time. Jamal Harris. Letitia Monroe. Elijah Carter." Holt flinched at the last name, his eyes darting to the door as if escape were an option. "You're out of your depth, Carter," he said, but his voice trembled, the words hollow. Daniel played another clip, this one from a suppressed complaint, a woman's voice, shaking. "Holt told me to drop it, said I'd lose my job." The judge stood, his face pale, then pink, then white. "This is entrapment," he snapped, but Daniel cut him off. "It's evidence. And it's enough." Holt sat silent, his hands trembling as he clutched his briefcase, the weight of his own words crushing him. The interrogation of Travis Holden was next, set for noon in a room with a one-way mirror, its walls scuffed from years of confessions and lies. Travis entered in cuffs, his uniform gone, replaced by a gray jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. His buzz cut was uneven now, his eyes bloodshot, his smirk still there but fraying at the edges. He sat, the cuffs rattling against the steel table, and leaned forward, his voice a growl. "You think you're some hero, Carter? Avenging your daddy? I kept order. You just push paper." Daniel stood across from him, his face a mask, his hands steady. He didn't take the bait. He placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. The screen flickered, showing body cam footage from 2008. A 15-year-old boy, Elijah Carter, lay on the ground, blood pooling under his head, his neck bent at an unnatural angle. Travis's voice, younger but unmistakable, laughed through the static. "Stay down, kid." The footage showed his boot pressing into Elijah's back, the boy's hands clawing at the pavement. Travis's smirk vanished, his face paling as the cuffs seemed to tighten. That was cleared, he stammered. "I didn't." Daniel cut him off, his voice ice. "You laughed. And I've got the tape." He leaned closer, his eyes locked on Travis's. "You remember Elijah Carter? My brother. You broke his neck. Called it an accident." Travis's hands shook, the cuffs rattling louder. "You're lying," he spat, but his voice cracked, his bravado crumbling. Daniel played another clip, this one from the courtroom, Travis's laugh as James dabbed blood from his lip. "You laughed then too," Daniel said. "You thought you were untouchable." Travis lunged forward, the cuffs jerking him back, his face red with rage. "You think you can take me down? I've got friends, Carter. People bigger than you." Daniel didn't flinch. He slid a photo across the table. Elijah, smiling, before that night in 2008. "You took him," Daniel said. "Now I'm taking you." The room fell silent, the air thick with the weight of truth. Behind the mirror, Leard and two agents watched, their faces grim. Travis slumped back, his eyes darting to the door, to the mirror, to nowhere. He was a man who'd built his life on fear, but now fear was his cage, and Daniel held the key. The trial came a week later. The Winston Hill courthouse transformed from a place of quiet complicity to a battleground. The courtroom was packed, standing room only, with reporters, activists, and locals spilling into the halls. Outside, a crowd chanted, their signs reading "Justice for James" and "No more badges." The video of Travis's slap had gone global, with over 50 million views, fueling protests from Atlanta to Chicago. A second rally formed, led by Justice Now, their megaphones blaring, "We see you, Travis. We see you, Holt." Cable news looped the footage, pundits arguing over context, while X drowned them in screenshots of Travis's laugh, James's bloodied glasses, and Elijah's broken body. James Carter took the stand on the second day, his suit the same gray one, still frayed but pressed with care. His glasses, clean now, glinted under the courtroom lights. The prosecutor, a woman named Carla Ruiz, walked him through the moment. "Mr. Carter, why did Lieutenant Holden strike you?" she asked. James's voice was steady, each word a stone dropped into still water. "I stood up," he said. "That was enough." The jury didn't move, their eyes fixed on him. Ruiz pressed further. "Did you provoke him? Raise your voice? Threaten him?" James's gaze didn't waver. "I blinked," he said. "Was that too much?" A murmur rippled through the room, not loud but heavy, like the first drops of rain before a storm. Travis's attorney, a slick man named Gregory Vance, tried to twist it. "Mr. Carter, isn't it true you disrespected Lieutenant Holden by refusing to sit when ordered?" James looked at him, his eyes calm but piercing. "I stood," he repeated. "I've been standing my whole life. If that's disrespect, then so be it." The jury shifted, one woman wiping her eyes, another man nodding slowly. Vance faltered, his notes slipping from his hands. James didn't need to say more. His presence, his silence, his bloodied handkerchief still folded in his pocket, said it all. Daniel testified next, his voice measured but unyielding. He presented the evidence: audio, call logs, the body cam footage of Elijah. The courtroom was silent as the footage played, Elijah's cries cutting through the air, Travis's laugh a blade that drew gasps from the gallery. A juror covered her mouth, another looked away. Daniel didn't look at Travis, didn't need to. The evidence was a noose tightening with every frame. Ruiz asked Agent Carter, "Why pursue this case so relentlessly?" Daniel paused, his eyes on his father in the front row. "Because no one else did," he said. "Not for my father. Not for my brother. Not for the others." Travis took the stand last, his bravado gone, his voice shaky. "I was maintaining order," he said, his eyes darting to the jury. The old manha was defiant. Ruiz didn't let him finish. She played the courtroom video again, Travis's laugh echoing, and asked, "Is this order, Lieutenant?" Travis stammered, his face red, his hands gripping the stand. "I didn't mean," he started, but the room wasn't listening. The jury's faces were stone. The gallery a sea of anger. Outside, the crowd's chants grew louder, spilling through the windows. No more lies. The press conference Travis held that night was a disaster. Flanked by a nervous lawyer, he faced a mob of reporters outside the precinct, their cameras flashing like gunfire. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted, his voice hoarse. A reporter cut him off. "You laughed at a 69-year-old man's blood. You broke a kid's neck." Travis froze, his eyes wide, his hands shaking. The crowd surged, their signs waving, their voices drowning him out. His lawyer pulled him back, but the damage was done. X lit up with clips of his meltdown. The hashtag Travis Crumbles trending worldwide. His precinct turned away, his allies silent, the blue line he'd leaned on for decades fraying to nothing. Holt's fall was quieter but no less brutal. He resigned the next morning, his letter brief, citing personal reasons. But Daniel's evidence call logs, audio, financial trails had reached the oversight board, and whispers of an indictment followed. The system wasn't clean, but it was cracking, and Daniel's file was the hammer. The verdict came on a Friday, the courtroom so quiet you could hear the creak of the benches. The jury forewoman, a teacher with graying hair, stood, her voice steady. On the charge of assault, guilty. On the charge of abuse of power, guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. 12 counts in total, each one a nail in Travis's coffin. He sat hollowed out, his eyes fixed on the table as the judge newly assigned, untainted sentenced him to 25 years, no parole. The gavel fell, sharp and final, and the room exhaled. James Carter sat in the front row, his hands folded, his face calm but unbowed. He didn't look at Travis. He didn't need to. Outside, the crowd erupted, their cheers a release of years of silenced pain. A young woman no older than 20 held a sign. James stood. "We stand." A pastor took the megaphone, his voice booming. "This is not the end. This is the beginning." Cameras rolled, capturing the moment, but Daniel was already gone, slipping out a side door. His work done but his fight far from over. In the quiet of his sedan, parked blocks away, Daniel opened his phone. A message from Priya Sharma, the tech analyst, waited. Holt's financials just flagged. "More names. You want in?" He didn't reply, not yet. He looked at a photo on his dashboard. James and Elijah, years ago, laughing on a porch swing. His fingers brushed the frame, his eyes steady. Travis was down, Holt was broken, but the system was still there, its roots deep, its branches wide. Daniel started the car, the engine a low hum, and drove into the night, the road ahead long but not endless. The Winston Hill courthouse stood quiet under a late afternoon sky, its chipped columns bathed in the soft gold of a setting sun. The crowds had dispersed, their signs leaning against lampposts, their chants fading into echoes that lingered in the streets. Inside, the courtroom was empty now, its benches scuffed, its air still heavy with the weight of what had transpired. The gavel's final strike had marked more than a verdict. It had cracked open a system that had long shielded men like Travis Holden. But for James Carter, sitting alone in the front row as the last reporters packed their cameras, it wasn't the verdict that mattered. It was the silence that followed, a silence that felt, for once, like possibility. Outside, Winston Hill was different. The city, once content to let its wounds fester in private, was awake. A mural had gone up overnight on the side of a brick building across from the courthouse, a cracked police badge. Its edges splintered, with James Carter's blood-streaked glasses painted in gold at its center. Below it, in bold black letters, a single phrase, "He stood." The artist, a young woman named Aisha Brooks, had worked through the night, her hands shaking as she painted, her eyes wet with the memory of her own father, a man who'd faced his own Travis Holdens and never backed down. By morning, the mural was a shrine, surrounded by flowers, candles, and notes scrawled with thanks. One read in a child's uneven hand, "Dear Mr. Carter, you're my hero. Caleb, age 9. James didn't see the mural yet. He sat on his porch that evening, his gray suit replaced by a faded flannel shirt, his silver glasses polished clean, though the memory of blood still lingered in their reflection. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh-cut grass, a soft breeze carrying the hum of cicadas. His coffee, black and steaming, sat untouched on the wicker table beside him. He looked out at the street where he'd raised his boys Daniel and Elijah, where he'd taught them to ride bikes, to stand tall, to never let the world's weight bend their spines. The porch creaked as Daniel stepped out, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up, his face softer now but still carrying the shadow of the fight. "You ever think about quitting?" James asked, his voice low, steady, the same voice that had carried him through decades of storms. He didn't look at his son, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the last light bled into dusk. Daniel sat beside him, the wicker chair groaning under his weight. "Every day," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "And every day I don't." "Why?" James's question wasn't a challenge, it was a door, one he'd opened for Daniel many times before. Daniel leaned forward, his hands clasped, his eyes tracing the cracks in the porch floor. "Because someone's got to make them sweat." He paused, his gaze drifting to a photo on the tablet, a faded Polaroid of James, Daniel and Elijah, laughing on this same porch years ago before the world took Elijah away. "Because you taught me that standing still isn't standing down." James nodded, the faintest smile crossing his lips, a smile that carried the weight of a lifetime. He reached for the coffee, his hand steady, and took a sip, the steam curling around his face like a prayer. They sat in silence, not the heavy kind that followed Travis's slap, but the kind that held understanding, a language only fathers and sons could speak. Across town, Travis Holden was a ghost. His precinct locker had been cleared out, his name scrubbed from the duty roster, his badge locked in an evidence vault. He sat in a holding cell, the gray walls closing in, his jumpsuit stained with sweat. The man who'd once walked Winston Hill like a king was reduced to a number, his laughter silenced, his allies gone. The news played on a loop in the guard station outside, clips of his press conference meltdown, his red face, his trembling hands, his voice cracking under the weight of a world that no longer believed him. X was merciless, with memes and threads tearing him apart. Travis Crumbles had over 1 million posts, one showing his smirk overlaid with the words "the fall of a false king." His lawyer had dropped him, his precinct had turned away, and the blue line he'd trusted for decades had frayed to nothing. Travis stared at the cell floor, his hands shaking, the echo of his own laughter now a chain he couldn't break. Judge Warren Holtzfall was quieter, but no less final. His resignation letter, a single paragraph email to the Oversight Board, cited personal reasons, but the truth was in the whispers: indictments pending, financial trails exposed, a career built on favors crumbling under scrutiny. His office, once a fortress of power, was empty by noon, his nameplate removed, his file seized by federal agents. A local paper ran a headline, "Judge Holt resigns amid scandal," with a photo of him leaving the courthouse, his face pale, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. The system he'd gamed for years was turning, and he was its first casualty. The verdict's ripple spread far beyond Winston Hill. The trial had been a spark, igniting reforms that had long been buried under red tape. Daniel's evidence call logs, audio, suppressed complaint had reached the state legislature, prompting new oversight protocols. Complaints could no longer vanish, every file was tagged, every silence flagged, stored in a digital archive accessible to the public. A task force, dubbed the Carter Protocols in quiet nods to Daniel, was formed to audit precinct records statewide, rooting out officers like Travis before they could strike again. A nonprofit, No More Closures, sprang up, digitizing records and teaching communities how to file complaints that couldn't be ignored. Its founder, Keisha Wells, the paralegal who'd uploaded the courtroom video, stood before a crowd at a community center, her voice steady. "We're not just fighting for James Carter. We're fighting for all of us." The mural grew into a movement. Across Georgia, then the country, similar images appeared: cracked badges, bloodied glasses, the words he stood painted on walls from Atlanta to Oakland. Protests continued, smaller now but no less fierce, with activists demanding body cam transparency and civilian oversight boards. A high school in Winston Hill renamed its library after James Carter, its walls lined with books on civil rights and justice. A scholarship fund, the Carter Stand, was established to support young black students pursuing law. Its first recipient, a girl named Maya who'd watched the trial on TV and decided to become a prosecutor. But the change wasn't just in policy or paint. It was in the air, in the way people walked Winston Hill's streets: a little taller, spoke a little louder. A barista at the local diner, a man who'd once avoided cops' eyes, now looked them square in the face. A teacher at the community center began classes on knowing your rights, her room packed with teenagers who'd seen James's glasses on the news. A pastor, the same one who'd led the rally, preached a sermon titled "The Power of Standing Still." His words streamed online to thousands. James Carter didn't raise a fist. He raised a mirror, and the system saw itself. Daniel didn't join the rallies or take the interviews offered by CNN and MSNBC. He didn't need to. His work was in the shadows, in the files he'd built, the evidence he'd secured. But the world noticed. A letter arrived at his apartment, forwarded from the FBI office, written in crayon on lined paper. "Dear Mr. Daniel, you're a hero. I want to be like you, but I won't hit nobody. Caleb." Daniel read it, his face still, but his eyes softened. He tucked it into his wallet, next to the photo of James and Elijah, a reminder of why he kept going. That night on the porch, James handed Daniel a small box. Inside was a watch, old but polished, its hands ticking steadily. "Your grandfather's," James said. "He wore it when he marched in Selma. Gave it to me when I joined the movement. Now it's yours." Daniel took it, his fingers tracing the worn leather strap, the scratches on the glass. He didn't speak, but his nod was enough. James looked at him, his eyes steady, the same eyes that had faced Travis Holden without flinching. "You did right by Elijah," he said. "And by me." Daniel slipped the watch onto his wrist, its weight grounding him. "I did what you taught me," he said. "Stand. Wait. When?" James smiled, wider now, his hand resting on Daniel's shoulder. "You learned better than I taught." The sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the porch, the jasmine scent stronger now, mingling with the coffee's bitter warmth. The street was quiet, but the world beyond it was not. News vans lingered in Winston Hill, their cameras trained on the mural, on the people who came to lay flowers. X buzzed with stories of James and Daniel, of a father who stood and a son who fought, their names now part of a larger story. A tweet from Keisha Wells went viral. James Carter stood. Daniel Carter struck. Together they changed us. It had 200,000 retweets by morning, each one a thread in a tapestry of change. The system wasn't fixed. Daniel knew that better than anyone. Men like Travis still wore badges, and men like Holt still held gavels. But the cracks were there, widening with every file opened, every voice raised. Daniel looked at his father, at the watch ticking on his wrist, at the photo on the table. The fight wasn't over, but for now they'd won something, not just a verdict, but a shift, a moment where the world saw what happened when one man refused to flinch and another refused to forget. As the stars emerged faint against the dusk, James raised his coffee cup, a silent toast. Daniel mirrored him, their cups clinking softly, the sound of promise carried forward. The porch creaked, the cicadas sang, and Winston Hill, for the first time in a long time, felt like a place where justice might just take root. All right, folks, let's take a step back from Winston Hill's drama-fueled courthouse and talk about what Justice Unraveled means for you, sipping your overpriced latte or scrolling X while pretending to work. This story isn't just about James Carter standing tall or Daniel Carter playing FBI chess master against a corrupt cop and a shady judge. It's about the real world, where badges sometimes shine brighter than justice and where a single act of courage like standing up in a courtroom can spark a wildfire of change. Sound familiar? It should. From viral videos of injustice to hashtags that topple giants, we're living in an era where one moment, one phone recording, can rewrite the script. Let's get real. Travis Holden thought he was untouchable, strutting around like he owned the place, until the internet said, "Hold up, buddy, you're not the main character." And James? That man's silence was louder than any megaphone, proving you don't need to shout to be heard, you just need to stand. In 2025, we're no strangers to this. We've seen X light up with justice for somebody, turning regular folks into heroes and exposing villains faster than you can say retweet. But here's the kicker, change doesn't stop at a verdict or a mural. It's in the policies we push, the votes we cast, and the conversations we have over dinner, or, let's be honest, over TikTok. Here's the lesson, served with a side of sass. Don't wait for a Daniel Carter to save the day. You've got a voice, a phone, maybe even a handkerchief as iconic as James's. Use them. Call out the Travis Holdens in your world, not with fists, but with facts, persistence, and maybe a viral post or two. And if you're thinking, I'm no FBI agent, neither was Keisha Wells, the paralegal who hit upload and changed the game. Justice isn't just for Cape Crusaders, it's for anyone who refuses to look away. So, next time you see something wrong, don't just scroll past, be the spark, not the bystander who forgets by breakfast. Now let's make this interactive. What's your he stood moment? Ever faced a Travis Holden in your life, a bully, a boss, or just a bad vibe who thought they owned the room? How do you stand up, or wish you had? Drop your story in the comments, because we're all part of this mural, painting change one brush stroke at a time. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like Justice Unraveled coming your way, tales of grit, heart, and the kind of justice that makes you cheer, cry, or maybe even stand a little taller. Join the channel and let's keep the conversation going. Who's ready to make the system sweat?